Hello fellow humans and welcome to the worst tier 9 tanks in World of Tanks Blitz. And obviously if you do disagree with my list, put it in the comments, tell me why. We start off with the M46 pattern. Well, it's not really that mobile. I mean, it is average there. The gun's not great, the penetration is pretty bad, and overall the armor isn't really anything special either. That's kind of the problem with the tank. It's not good at anything. It doesn't have anything where it's better at, but it does have a couple of things where it's worse at, mainly the penetration. Now, yes, something like an E50 does have that problem as well, but the penetration is a lot lower than a lot of the other tier 9 tanks, which pretty much has tier 10 levels of penetration. You know, like 250 millimeters on standard, 300 on the premium. This vehicle does not have that. It has 265 on the premium, which is obviously not great, especially in a tier 10 match. In a tier 8 match, you'll be fine. You have 3000 DPM, and that is a great value to have. However, in a tier 10 match, that penetration is gonna be somewhat painful. However, you still got your gun depression. You still got acceptable-ish turret armor. It's not great. You can get penned through the turret fairly easily, but if the enemies can't aim like the Chimera previously, then you'll be fine. The problem is, tier 9 is a tier where, first of all, there aren't that many tanks compared to tier 8 and tier 10, simply because there are just less premiums, especially compared to tier 8. So there is a lot less tanks, so you can't find tanks with as vast differences as you can in tier 8, really. So everything is a bit closer together, which makes weaknesses like that all the more present, and that's not really great. And obviously, as always, the tank matters only as much as the player can carry it. A tank that is bad on paper can still be played extremely well. A tank that is great on paper can still be played absolutely horribly. However, the M46 pattern, it's not really that great, and for a tier 9, you kind of expect a bit more than what this tank does have, especially when you compare it to, you know, something like a Centurion 7-1 that has a bit of more stuff going on. Speaking of going, I want to go and never touch this tank ever again, because, I mean, it's the one before the T57 Heavy, the T54E1. Does have more penetration than the pattern. However, the dispersion on this thing is absolutely horrible, and it doesn't even have each E round. Mobility is not great, and the armor is also not great. You can get pinned fairly easily through a turret, given the enemy can somewhat aim. However, it does have an autoload, which makes it more complex, but if you know how to use it, if you know how to use the burst of this tank correctly, which is 930 damage, then you'll be perfectly fine. However, for some reason, a lot of people that play this tank are really, really bad. Like, I rarely see good T54 E1s driving around. Which again, the player matters a lot more than the tank, and the player can pull a tank down quite a bit as well. In a situation like this, I can use the gun depression that this vehicle has to simply peek this ridgeline, and you also have, if you're on this side of Port Bay, you have that extra hill that you can see right behind me there, where you can peek up, so you need less gun depression to actually get over, which means if you need more gun depression, that's where you can peek. And that's 3k damage, just by peeking a couple times. Obviously, 3k damage, 3 clips. It's not really that impressive. However, it's not really doing that well, this vehicle. The 57 Heavy is way better. It's a heavy tank as well. I mean, has better armor, just has a way better gun as well. And this tank's not really played well either. So that's why it's definitely on this, because compared to a T57 Heavy, this thing is an absolute joke. It's a medium tank. You know, ends with a heavy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's actually a heavy tank in World Tanks PC now, but it is not. Now, what is not is also that Barak. He's gone, but he's right there, because he was just hiding, and now, what can I do? Do more damage, unload the clip. I know what he's trying to do. I track him, because I know he's going to try to die here. So I track him, I get the third shell in. Obviously, it takes 10 seconds to die in the water, which means I cannot reload. And he is going to drown. And I will not get any more damage, unfortunately, but that's the game. And right there. But that's almost 5k damage with this vehicle. So you could be like, hey, but it's a good tank. I just played one battle, and this is the battle I got. And yes, a great player will be able to make a bad tank play well. The problem is, sometimes you have to fight the tank to do well. And this is one of them. Now yes, I like the pattern. This thing does have the full tier 10 penetration values, pretty much. However, if we look at something like a Type 61 that has gun depression, this thing does not. Only has 6 degrees of gun depression, which is not really good for a tank of this type. I mean, the Leopard 1 has, I think, 9 or 10. This thing has 6, which is horrible. And now, obviously, it's not the easiest tank to play as well, because, I mean, he has no armor at all. Even though in tier 9, it shouldn't matter that much more anymore how easy a tank is to play. But obviously, because of how hard it is to play, it's doing terribly. Compared to a Leo as well. Obviously, it's a tier lower. It's like, why? Gun depression is horrible. The armor is horrible. Mobility is very, very good, obviously. But can you use that mobility? That is the question. And using that mobility often comes down to the player again. So can you use the mobility? It can be a very good tank. Can you not use that mobility? It will be an absolute horrible, horrible machine that will not bring you any joy. And then again, if you can't play the Leopard PTA, you won't be able to play the Leopard 1 either. So think of that. If you're bad in the tier 9, probably going to be bad in the tier 10 as well. Unless you look at a tier 41, that is just bad. But the Leopard PTA definitely does lack that extra to keep going a bit further. And it does lose to something like an E50, a Type 61, or even a T54, which does have that little bit of armor. Now, honorable mention here has to be made to the IS-8, which is terrible. However, I didn't quite fully include it in the list because, I mean, it's still somewhat easier to play. It should get more armor, really, to make it more in line, but so should the IS-3. The IS-3 should get some extra armor as well to sort of make that line a bit better. But to be honest, the gun's good enough. It'll do, basically, with the IS-8 there. And same goes for the WZ-11114. Now, Leopard PT is a tank that I personally skipped with 3 XP. And I could probably recommend that too, if you can, in fact, afford it. If not, have fun. You'll need it.